am Ebony A. Harris, and I am a librarian too with San Jose Public Library. I am situated in the Teenage Cube, which is on the first floor mezzanine. But I have the pleasure of helping to arrange this wonderful artist reception and talk. This exhibit is actually an exhibit that has been showcasing throughout the Bay Area. The main location is the Richmond Art Center, but there are satellites in places like Oakland, Livermore, and now San Jose. We have three of the wonderful artists, Mr. Stephen Bruce, Mr. Kelvin Curry, who is an SJSU alumni, and TheArthur Wright come in and speak about the three art pieces they each brought respectively. We had a wonderful talk. We had brilliant questions that inspired more talk from the artists as we learned which different aesthetics and materials that they use to create their artwork. And now everyone is just wonderfully mingling with all of these artists and making personal connections.
But at any rate, I've been here for about almost 60 years, and I wasn't an artist when I first got here. I was a writer, and I had just gotten published when my wife sneakily took some paintings to the University of Berkeley, and came home about a couple weeks later with all this money, and started throwing them on the table, the dinner table. And I asked her, where did she get this money from, because we didn't have very much to spend or to spare. She said, I sold your paintings. And I said, oh. I said, I'm gonna have to rethink about a few things here. So that's when I made an abrupt change from writing to art. And I started out just doing regular painting, styles of charcoal, watercolors, all that, and did that for about 5 years. And almost immediately when I started doing artwork, they started to sell. And then we had the forerunner to the organization that we belong to now, the Art of the African Diaspora. Preceding that was the Art of the Living Black. And I think Kelvin was another one of the ones that I met when I first got there. But that got me started on meeting more people, more artists, more venues to sell, at which to sell. So I've been doing that ever since then. Shortly after that, I got my first internet sale in about 1997, I think it was. I got an email from Johannesburg wanting to know if they could buy my work. And I said, not a problem. So anyway, a woman who bought it, her father lived in Johannesburg, and she was a lawyer practicing her work in Iowa. And so she bought 2 pieces and sent them to him. I guess my main concern then was whether or not I did Zulu people accurately enough. And since I've heard no more about it, I guess I did. But just about that time, matter of fact, just before that time, Shaka Zulu was pretty popular on TV. My friend's mother, who was born there in Durban, I believe, she convinced us to watch it. We much prefer to go to the nearest bar and have a few drinks, but she convinced us to watch the first showing of that. And I came away highly impressed with their culture and their history. And so some of the first work I did was of the Zulu people. And I sold a lot of those early ones, but very cheap. You should have bought me then, but right now it's up to where it should be, I think. But I guess since then I've just been doing this. By the way, now I do not use the regular traditional mediums anymore. I use Clorox bleach as my main medium. Wherever you see gold on these paintings behind me, that's where the bleach has done its work. And it's one of those kind of processes that it happens slowly. It takes about maybe 5 to 10 seconds for the drop of bleach to appear on the paper. So that means that it takes a long time to do a painting. when I first got started, it would take me 3 months, 4 months to do one of these, because I'm still pretty particular where I put it. I want to be precise about what I do. And I developed a style there too of trying to incorporate three-dimensional qualities in the work. I had an African student come by and she accused me of doing something wrong. So I had to tell her that I'm the artist, I'll do what I want. But I took that to heart. From then on, I tried to do it as accurately as I could. And I think it worked out pretty well. Right now, I'm being collected in about 15 countries. And I'm proud of that fact. Because like all these other artists that came from high-powered schools like Bruce. But a lot of artists went to school to learn how to paint, and I did not. And I came from another discipline, and I was able to move through pretty easily. And I've enjoyed the whole trip. And now here I am at Spartan's Haven. Thank you.
This show, Art of the African Diaspora, has been going on for 26 years. I'm not the baby of the bunch, but as an artist, I'm probably the baby of the bunch. I started in 2006, creating work. When I first came to the Bay Area, I met TheArthur, Kelvin Curry. Kelvin's been doing this show every year since 1997. So he is just a handful of people who've done the show all 26 years. All right? TheArthur wasn't in the first show, but I'm sure he was shortly thereafter. And so I've had the benefit of learning from them what it is to be an artist, the discipline that it takes. And so I'm gonna say this a little louder and a little clearer. Each one of this gentleman's paintings are created using bleach on paper. And everything you see is the discoloration of that paper as he applies blotches of bleach. We did a workshop at a school. We did a residency at a middle school about eight years ago.
Oh, that was Martin Luther King's school.
What's open?
What's open, yeah.
And I can remember the kids were so fascinated, but they would say, well, what if you use blue paper? He said, it turns yellow. What if you use red paper? It turns yellow. But the idea that you can slow down your mind to create imagery that people will recognize is such a unique technique. And so I wanted to highlight that and highlight the fact that, like I said, how long this show has been going on. In the catalog, it talks about the history of the show. I encourage you to take a look at that, just because it's a network of artists who have supported each other with the founder's vision over 26 years. And we make the claim that it's the longest running show of its kind. We say in the state, but I don't want to say nationally, because I don't know a show that's gone on that long that supports artists of African descent. So I wanted to make that, I just wanted to throw a light bulb back over his head, all right? These pieces are on brass. I'm actually using the same base chemicals. So the greens on these pieces are actually, I'm using, there's a commercial product. If you want your copper mailbox or your copper gutters to turn green, you could actually treat it and they get that color like the Statue of Liberty. Only if you use ammonia gives blues on copper. So if I take some ammonia, just put it on a piece of copper, let it sit, it'll actually turn like dark navy blue. So what I'll do is on top here, this is actually ammonia, and in this case, it's not like the ammonia you have in your cabinet. It's ammonium sulfate, which is a fertilizer. And so I'll actually spray the metal with this chemical without cleaning it. By not cleaning it, there's impurities on it. And so that makes it kind of break up. Whereas if I cleaned it, it would just be like one solid color. I know that from experience. The bottom here, we're taking that commercial product and I'm taking some of that same mixture and mixing them together. So I get a blue-green versus just the green. all these things look like just white water. So if you walked into my studio and you saw a glass, you don't want to drink it because it may be something. I used to have a studio in West Oakland, a place called American Steel Studios, and I had mixed some chemicals in this little, if you guys remember, little CD, boxes with little clear caps, you can't see. So I have a bunch of those, and I mix chemicals sometimes. And I had to mix this stuff, and I had it sitting, on a little box in the corner. And somebody came in, and they had their dog, and the dog started drinking it, and I was like, it was just fertilizer. But it gives me those colors. So knowing, sometimes I might be using ferric nitrate. Sometimes I might be using ferric nitrate chloride. Sometimes I use regular acids as well. On copper is so reactive, I could use pineapple juice. I could use, and sometimes I'll actually do a organic acid, and then come back over with a chemical acid to embellish that color and get some of the blend of that.
Thank you.
All right. And matter of fact, on the back side of the catalog, if you hold that on the back side up, that piece is actually organic sugarcane vinegar on copper, and the top is ferric nitrate chloride. A lot of my work is kind of abstract landscape, and I tell people it's not a place, but I want you to get the sense of a place, as you can see. So, again, I started showing my work in 2006. Prior to showing my work, I was a sales rep for an artist. I did that for, I don't know how long, like 17 years. And I can remember as I was contemplating what I was gonna do as an artist, a friend of mine told me, he said, I don't care what you do, I know whatever you do is gonna be good. All right? That was Kelvin Curry. I've known Kelvin since about 1993. I think we were both married at the time to other women. But I had this concept that if I could manipulate oxidation on copper using acid, that'd be an interesting technique. So all my works are on copper or brass, occasionally steel, and the colors are all manipulated by whatever acid I use. This particular one I'm holding right now is actually some Frank's Red Hot Sauce and some pickled peppercini, and treating the metal with that and letting it sit is what creates that color. All right? And so I know that if I use that combination, what colors I'll get. If I use pineapple juice, I get something else. If I use rice wine vinegar, I get a different tone. If I use seasoned rice wine vinegar, I get something different from that. Each one has a unique response on the metal, so as I'm thinking of the scene, I'm contemplating what I'm going to use to achieve those color tones. I started out working mostly on copper, and I figured, since brass is the alloy of copper, I should get similar responses, and so I started experimenting with brass as well. For anybody here,
Stephen, let me break in for a minute too. And I'll say that I think between what Stephen does and how he does it, and what I do and how I do it, we probably are the most dynamic duo I can think of that are mad scientists to begin with.
as my mother says, what in the world made you think that if you put pineapple juice on some metal, you could make some artwork? And of course I didn't. I really started out using chemicals, and I tried something one time and passed out, and then thought, there has to be an easy way to do this. And so as I started, kind of went back to my old AP chemistry thinking, and found acetic acid. Acetic acid is common household vinegar, and only at full strength. And I tried that, and I got color, which made me try red wine vinegar, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then you start thinking of anything, tomato juice, anything that's acidic. So if you come in my studio, you might actually see, it looks like I'm getting ready to go to a picnic with the barbecue sauce and the ketchup and so forth. But they're all, they're all colors to me and what's going to happen. The work is finished with a automotive clear. So people say, is it a what's the stuff they use now? That's all. That's the rage. The pour stuff.
Epoxy?
Yeah, epoxy. People say, is it epoxy? And I say, no. It's the same thing your car is finished with. When they paint your car, they spray a clear over it. I do that because once I treat the metal, I need to seal it so that it doesn't continue to oxidize. Imagine if you took the Statue of Liberty and scrubbed it down to bare metal, and then sprayed a clear coat on it, it would never turn green. It would just stay copper looking. So, I started in 2006, and like I said, I've had amazing mentors in terms of creativity, in terms of how to be an artist professionally. My first year in this show was 2008, and I think I've participated every year since except for 2 years. And I'm the chair of the steering committee that puts on the whole show. And so one of the things I would encourage everybody to do, there's a poster over there that has each one of us have a poster, a little art statement, and on the bottom are QR codes. On the bottom of the QR code, one might say exhibit info. If you scan that one, you should find pricing information. If you scan one that says follow me, that's for Instagram, and I think mine has a link tree on it. And so, and then I'll say this last thing, which is really not about me because I got the shine on TheArthur. When I came down and talked to Ms. Harris about an exhibit here, and she said, okay, this is the room, and typically, we would be in a room where we'd set up walls and people walk through and look at the work on walls. And I knew that I needed artists who could think outside the box in terms of what the experience could be. And so I think I said, you know what if we put the work in the windows, and that way people can see it all the time, also signage in the windows. And one of the artists who was here with me said, yeah, I don't see the benefit of that. And I said, wow. And so I knew that if I talked to TheArthur Wright and Kelvin Curry, they would know the benefit of that. And so, again, I've known Kelvin since 1993, and when I was trying to figure out what I was gonna do, he would just say, I ain't worried about you, you gonna figure it out. And there are so many things I've learned in the business from him, and I'm sure it's because of his great education here at San Jose State in the art department, but I'm gonna turn it over to Kelvin Curry.
My name is Kelvin Curry, born and raised in Oakland. Came to San Jose State in 1983, an art major. I started drawing in the 4th grade. From an early age, I knew I was going to be an artist. If someone would look at my marks, my grades, art is the only thing that I really excelled in. Everything else, I was pretty much just an average student. But when it came to arts and design, is where I excelled in. So that's the direction that I went. I had wonderful teachers here at State. Russell Leong for design. I had Alice Carter for illustration. Leroy Parker. Missing one other teacher. Reed Estabrook for photography was an amazing photography teacher. And when I left here, I started doing art shows. I toured the country, art festivals, group shows, solo shows, home shows, farmers market. I did between 30 and 40 shows a year for a good 15 years of my life. And I'm still at it. I don't do as many shows as I've done in the past. I've gotten older now. But still alive, still doing my work, still kicking, still doing shows. I'm having flashbacks being here. I've had some really good teachers here. And just offhand, I was just standing there thinking about a few of them that I had that kind of helped me along my way. Russell Leong was in the design department, and I think he still has a design studio in Cupertino. Bonnie Carter, I think she goes with Alice Carter. She was an illustrator, teacher here, one of my good teachers. Leroy Parker, who's also shown in the art of African Diaspora. You know Leroy Parker, right? Yeah. Yeah. And that's just to name a few teachers. Oh, I had a guy named Reed Estabrook for photography. Incredible photographer. He was so good. And I'll never forget this. One day, and we're in class for photography, right? And one day in the middle of his lecture, he says, you know what? I'm gonna teach you guys how to frame because you might use it, you might need it one day. And my photography teacher taught me how to frame my artwork. And to this day, I still think about that guy every time I do my frame because he didn't have to do that. So that's just an example of the type of education I got here at San Jose State. Little things like that will give you little tools to help you along the way. So that's San Jose State. Oh, the art of Diaspora. Steve mentioned I've done it every year, 26 years. And prior to that, I used to show in LA. And this is in the early 90s, late 80s. And there was a show called The Artist Salute to Black History Month. And in the 80s and 90s, at that time the largest gathering of black artists this side of the Mississippi. And during that time, it was Jacob Lawrence was show there, was part of the Harlem Renaissance, he'd be there, Ernie Barnes, Burnett Honeywood, Bridget Joyce Smith, who had her work in the Cosby Show. All those people were in that show in LA. And then Ray Louise Hayward, who started this group show, was in that show. So she took that concept and brought that to the Bay Area and started this artist show with the black artists in the Bay Area. I'm just giving you the history of the art of the African diaspora. Oh, the work. Okay, so I work in a series. Each piece you see here is part of a series. Each piece, the series is between 5 and 75 pieces of each series of art. And I tend to create depending on where I am in my life's journey. For example, this piece is part of my series called the Summer of Love. And this was done after I went through a divorce, I was living in the Valley, in Solano County. I moved back to Oakland, to an urban area. I was getting my life back together and trying to figure out which direction to go. So all the pieces kind of reflect that. And the most recent series is called Truth Matters series, which is the piece to my left here. And this concept came up with me just studying and viewing African masks during the pandemic. So this is started, I call it a remix. I took an African mask and I just remixed it and made it aesthetically different, making it more modern, but still keeping it primitive at the same time. And it's about 50 pieces in this series also.